starting our live broadcast, live streaming on Kardec Radio, the Facebook page of Kardec Radio, and we are also live on Kardec Radio on your Android or your iPhone device. Now, if you want to get Kardec Radio for your Android or iPhone device in the PlayStation or the Play Store in Android and the App Store in the Apple device, just look up Kardec Radio, Kardec space radio, Radio. You can download it for free. The app costs nothing. You can get 24 hours a day of Spiritist radio programs, music, discussions, everything. Also, please join the Kardec Radio Facebook. There are many different Facebook streamings by many people talking about Spiritism, talking about mediumship, talking about spirits, etc. Now, tonight, we are talking about Jesus Christ and his appearances in heaven. Now, of course, and this is all according to Spiritists, spirits coming and talking to Spiritist mediums. Of course, it all started with this book, the Spirits book. For everyone, I recommend, if you want to understand the world around you, why good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people, the fact that we reincarnate, the fact that we're immortal souls that will live life after life in our quest to become a pure spirit. It all starts with here in the 1850s, Allan Kardec, the Spirits book. You can find that on my blog site as far as a link to it. I'll just click on his picture. It's on the top right-hand side. It'll take you to the EDI CEI bookstore. You can order the book from that location. Or you can also just in Google or whatever search engine you want to use, look up the Spirits book or Allan Kardec, and with PDF. All of his books are in PDF, so it will cost you nothing if you just want to skim through and start reading about it. That's how I started. Now, to our exciting topic. And this is exciting. Now, in most of the Spiritist literature, you read about Jesus Christ kind of tangentially, right there. I know, and I forgot, I'm sure probably someone on this program will put in the comment section later. There's one part where Andre Luis is in the lower zone and he sees all these spirits coming down and he talks, what's going on? What's going on? He says, I can't talk to you right now. Jesus is going to a part of the lower zone and cleaning things out. And so you don't get, a real good picture of Jesus as part of the spirit world. But in the books by the Reverend G. Val Owen, you get a lot more. You get interesting observations of Jesus. And, here's the book I'm talking about, Heaven and Below, Book 1 of Spiritism, the Spirit World Revealed to an Anglican Vicar. So again, there's links to that on my website, nwspiritism.com. It's very exciting. And let's talk about Jesus for a second. Now, when I'm talking about Jesus Christ, I'm not expecting you, if you're a Buddhist or you're Jewish, I'm not expecting you to say, Jesus is your personal savior. Spiritism doesn't demand that of you. You don't even have to believe in God to rise in heaven. I'm sure it helps, but you just have to be a good person. Hopefully you believe something in the spirit world. And usually what the religions tell us now is Jesus is a person that, will love you. You go to heaven, he'll give you a hug, a pat on the head, and he'll be a wonderful person. And that's all true. But what Spiritism does is it somewhat, demystifies Jesus in the spirit world. Because according to Spiritism, Jesus is the governor of our planet. He is in charge of our education on the campus Earth. As such, he has many ministers, departments, organizations, and areas of responsibility reporting to him. In other planets, there are spirits on the same level or maybe higher than Jesus who are in charge of groups of planets. So think about that for a second. So Jesus is part of the community of pure spirits who formed our solar system and the planet Earth. His team, so think of his team, fertilized our terrain with the building blocks of life and guided evolution over the course of millions of years to culminate in the emergence of the human form, a form that was intellectual and dexterous enough to contain a soul that was allowed more than instinct. It was given free will. That's why we're lucky here on earth. We have free will to be as good or bad, indifferent as we want to be. So hence, one could think of Jesus as like the dean of earth over our campus, right? Because we are on a planet of atonement. We're all learning. We're, I don't know, elementary or junior high school level, where we're still paying and, repairing past wrongs and learning about how to become a civilized person. So you can think of a dean of earth, the chairman of the board of earth, the president of earth, or whatever title one you could think of describes a person who built a planet, seeded life, managed the prehistoric ages through all his functionaries, planned out the rise of the human race, and still actively determines our directions, monitors our progress. Now, isn't this a little bit different than what you see in other areas of what we consider Jesus, right? This is what Spiritism brings. It wants to give us the truth of how the spirit world works, right? Why did Allan Kardec, the codifier of Spiritism, through the spirit of truth under the command of Jesus, tell us all the things so we can understand what our part is on earth and what we need to do about it. So first, Jesus himself told us exactly what he was. In Mark 14:62 and Matthew 24:64, it said this, and Jesus said, I am, and you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven. So his titles, Son of Man, Son of God, begin to make sense in his command of all that we are and in the context of his coming to earth and sharing in our suffering and directing us to a better path. Jesus is the high spirit, a most wonderful light that has come into all of our lives. He loves us all. He doesn't need for us to believe in him, as I said before, but only improve in our own capacity to love. After all, we are his creation. Think of it. He created the planet. He commanded all aspects of our environment, the rivers, the mountains, the oceans, the moon, the animals which support us in our very bodies, which temporarily house our soul. Jesus became a high spirit in the same way that we are traveling. As we start out as a primitive spirit, graduated to a planet of atonement, where we are now, Jesus himself, billions of years ago, maybe more, went past our current level and ascended to his position of immense responsibility. There are other high spirits in charge of other planets, and there are spirits who are on a more advanced stage than Jesus Christ. Nevertheless, no matter what distant star we shall travel to in the future, we shall always be intertwined with Jesus. He made us what we are and what we will be. Like that one magical teacher you look back at and know they transformed your life and brought forth potential that you didn't even know you had. Jesus shall always be responsible for setting our character and personality on the track to ascendance. For that, we should be eternally grateful. So Jesus is in charge of all of these things. He is, as I said before, like a CEO, and he cares about us. But it's not just us. Because imagine when people think about heaven, this is why one of the important things on this book, Heaven and Below, talks about heaven and what G. Bao Owen and the other books by Henri Louis, psychographed by Chico Xavier, is heaven. The spirit universe was here before our physical universe. And as such, it is very complex and it needs a lot of organization. And so we think we are the center of everything, but actually the spirit universe, there's a lot to it. And even in the spirit universe, in the lower zone, or the umbral, as they say in Portuguese, there are spirits who need help. And Jesus, Sylvia from Puyallup, Washington, how wonderful to hear from you. So Jesus understands that his help is needed everywhere. And I'll give you an example. In spiritist centers, there are groups of mediums that, what do? They help spirits on the umbral. They help spirits on the umbral become, help them understand, sometimes they don't know that they even died. I'll give you an example. So I was at a mediums meeting on, actually last week, Thursday. Federico says, Jesus made us who we are. This is quite confusing to me. So let me explain this. And I probably is not specific enough, but what I am saying is that Jesus is the one that actually created our planet and created Earth, help guide, created through his ministers, right? He had a lot of help guide the whole evolution and geological process of our planet. And therefore, when I say Jesus made who we are, I mean us in our human form, not our personality, right? Because we could be on other planets through under leaders, right? And become who we are in our personality. And I should have said, and I'm glad you asked, is he made us who we are in our human form, because our human form is the product of the evolution, because this is probably another whole topic for a talk, but, evolution is somewhat, regular principles of evolution by Darwin, but also subtly guided by spirit. So that's what I mean. Jesus is who we are. And let me know if that answers your question or not. So that was a good question. So anyway, so think of Jesus not only helping us on earth, but helping spirits below. So I was at a mediums meeting with in a spiritual center in Rio de Janeiro. And, there's like 8 mediums around the table. And as the spiritist meetings, they're held at the same time on the same day of the week. There's a spirit mentor. Oh, he is the governor or God himself? No, he is, Jesus is not God. Another good question. Even if you look at in the books by the Reverend G. Bowen, which I've done, like Heaven Below, and I talk about this even in other books, is that even high spirits do not fully understand God. Jesus is a high spirit who is very important and influential to us, but Jesus is not God. Jesus is one of the messengers of God. Communicates. I don't know how close he communicates. There's a lot, even information that you see from the Spirit's book and other things. There's a lot that we probably are not able to understand at this point in time. So, anyways, the Spirit's meeting, and and there are trance mediums. Those who are spirits will come and they'll use them to talk through, and then there's our consoling mediums that will talk to the trance medium, but they will actually talk to the spirit. And as I was there, the trance medium came, and this person was saying, I'm being tortured. I feel terrible. My body's decomposing. And this poor spirit body was decomposing and didn't know and had no idea. They were probably never educated spiritually that their soul is immortal, and that they would, at death, their soul, their spirit, would detach from their temporary physical body and go to the spirit world. And therefore, since this poor spirit did not know that, he still felt he was attached. And the consoling medium talked to him and helped him come out of it. There's other examples. And so think about this. And the spirits, the higher spirits came and brought these spirits to the spiritist meeting. And so think of the organization of spirits that are mentors of spiritist centers, spirits that go out and bring other spirits that need help, like this poor person. Another example is this woman's medium, a woman's spirit started using her, and it was hard for me to understand because first, I'm not that great in Portuguese, and then she was like crying the whole time, so it was really hard to understand what she was saying, but she was evidently very perturbed, wasn't clear what was going on, and she was crying a lot. And then on the other side of the table, another woman medium came and said, what's this crying all about? And, who wants to hear this? And then she started talking about, I'm here. So evidently the woman who was crying, the higher spirit said, okay, well, we've helped her enough. She's got to settle down emotionally. So this other woman spirit said, I want a tribunal. I'm here for a tribunal. He goes, this spirit, this other spirit over here, he killed my husband because he was obsessed by me. So I'm just telling you, there's all these stories, there's all this drama going on. and I don't want to go into too much detail. I'll write this up for a later article on nwspiritism.com. But so she said, I don't love him, but he's obsessed. And then another spirit, another medium, then was used by this person who had been obsessing this poor woman who killed her husband. He goes, well, I love her. I'm passionate about her. And the consoling medium said, yes, but that's not love. That's not love. You're actually harming her. And at the end, to make a long story short, at the end, the guy said, okay, and the consoling medium said, that's not love. What are you doing? Think about that. And at the end, that spirit said, yes, I will think about it. You're right. That is not love, what I'm doing to that person. So just giving you a small little window. This is just some of the interconnection and intertwining of the spirit world, the physical world. It's just there's so much out there, and this is the beauty of Spiritism, that it's starting to reveal. I mean, does it reveal everything? No. I think you have to look at it as you're looking through like a little keyhole, and you're seeing shadows, but we're able to start making more sense of what's going on than we were ever before. This is what's so great about this whole thing. So let me give you an example in Reverend G. Vallon's book of Jesus Christ. So, and actually this is what the High Spirit Arnel spoke to the mind of the Reverend G. Vallon. Now, Reverend G. Vallon had these communications in the early 20th century, 1910s, 1920s. And what Arnel told the Reverend G. Vallon is that every age in the beginning, the high ones, so we are told, so again, remember, these spirits who we think of high spirits are probably relatively low spirits if you look at everything. And they even say this, but to us, we're like kindergartners and they're the teachers and the principals. He says that every age in the beginning, the high ones, so we are told, take counsel. Results accruing from sometime ages are gathered and laid before them. Those of ages very ancient are rehearsed in tabulated form and briefly. Those of the near ages are given in greater detail. Those of the ages last passed in full. These are considered in their bearing upon events at that time proceeding on Earth. Then the cosmic planets have their hearing, which is planets like the Earth, and next both Earth and them together. So the council starts with no hurry, comes at such a conclusion as when put in operative form for the next age will be harmonious with the acts of other hierarchies who have in charge the guidings of planets other than this of Earth. So this is what dictated the High Spirit of Arnel to the mind of Reverend G. Vallon, who wished to convey the supra-universal governing body which determines our destiny. Arnel exposes the existence of a council of great creative lords, spirits on the level with Christ, who move and form planetary systems, set the path of evolutionary life, and guide the destinies of entire intelligent species. And when Arnel states, then the cognate planets have their hearing, he is notifying us that the council studies planets which are on similar levels as a group. Hence, the Earth, which is the planet of atonement, is most likely put in the same basket as other planets of atonement. The president of the council is Jesus, while in the Spiritist book, On the Way to the Light, published in 1939, which is, 15, 20 years after the information from G. Vallon, the Spirit Emmanuel talks about a community of pure spirits, which is very close, of which Jesus is a member. Emmanuel doesn't reveal a leader of the group. Therefore, two Spiritist spirits gives a little bit different, but I think they're both. Emmanuel Arnel describes the meanings of these groups as being eons apart in determining our destiny. Emmanuel transcribed his book to Chico Xavier in Portuguese, and Arnel communicated with the Reverend G. Vallon in English. Therefore, the name of the group could be merely a translation different, or there could be multiple organizations. I believe the evidence weighs on the side of one organization of very high spirits who are guiding our section of the universe. And remember, we're just a tiny part of the universe. There are other community, I'm sure, of pure spirits or our community of high spirit lords who are guiding other parts of the galaxy or other galaxies. And a statement from Arnell serves as cement that the two groups mentioned are one of the same. It is this: that council of the high powers of which I spoke is the same which gathers for deliberations from age to age. Their decrees are registered at the time in earth records when revelation is made of them to those who are able to receive them. Thus, that council met when the material cosmos was devised. In Emmanuel's conversations, he states the council met when the solar system containing Earth was to be formed. He states that the last time the organization met in the vicinity of Earth was when Christ was planning to descend to Earth, but that another meeting was imminent. Chico Xavier in the 1970s reported that the third meeting near Earth did take place in 1969 when men went to the moon. It was determined to give humanity 50 years to gauge whether or not mankind would be allowed to maintain their technological advances depending on the possible occurrences of a nuclear war. Arnell, on the other hand, tells us that the chart for the course of Earth had been laid. This was all reported in 1919, that there would be no material differences between the two descriptions, since most probably Arnell was speaking in broad terms and Chico reported more tactical decisions. So look at this as we look as a large corporation. We set strategies, and then within the strategies, there are tactics to implement the strategies. And these are dynamic, right? And even in the spirit world, there's always little changes going on. I mean, even Chico himself said, when he first came to Earth, he said, Emmanuel told him, your mission is to write is to psychograph 50 books. And then it went up and up and up. So, the whole area, when we say our destiny, is mostly predetermined within our own little episodes, there's still, depending on our actions and the actions of others around us and these type of things, there's still dynamic. The dynamism in this. So it just shows you the complexity of the spirit world is that, you just have to look at that we're students. We're all being evaluated on our course, and that what we do in one life affects our courses in the next life. And that even what we do in the courses provided to us, when I say courses or classes, I'm seeing things like events in our life, maybe an auto accident, maybe a good marriage, maybe a bad marriage, maybe a boyfriend or girlfriend or some other type of friend leaving us or being mean to us. These are all things that happen. And they're always there, not to punish us, not to, slap us on the wrist. It's for us to learn something that we needed to learn, that we had not, created that, repaired that blemish in our personality before. And then Arnell also spoke about other planets related to Earth, which is very important. So we have to remember, back in the old times, Earth was the center of the universe. The sun revolved around the Earth. Even now we think, now more and more we're thinking that there's got to be alien life, and we're actually looking at other planets. But remember, all this stuff was written in 1920s. The Spirits book was 1850s, and where they said there's life everywhere. There's no such thing as a vacuum of nothing. So anyway, Arnell said, I speak of those other worlds which have more near relation to Earth, both as to degree of development and of the trend of its evolution. Those planets which have followed a free-willed career, most like that of Earth, and have also attained to a degree of intellect and spirit, most accord with Earth in its present age. These are not only those which are most near Earth in spatial difference, but as I say, in intellectual and spiritual content. So think about this. So if we're going to a college and there's a dean of physics and there's a dean of English and there's teachers and there's teachers formations and there's buildings and there's a whole organization of colleges, and they have this process where they take children, coming out of high school, and they process them to graduate. And one college is not that materially different than another, right? They all follow, broadly. There's always some differences depending on the circumstance. And they all probably, broadly follow the same process. Earth is no different. We are a planet of atonement. There are other planet atonements. And what they're doing is they're looking, okay, college A and college B. Okay, why are you guys off, right? Okay, we'll set direction for you and we'll set direction for you. And we'll make sure that we, bring these students in these different colleges up to the same degree. Because we don't want the planet Earth graduating ignorant souls, while this other planet is graduating really great spirits. No, we want to make sure they're all really good, right? So we want to always look at them and see where they are in relationship to each other. So, I mean, doesn't this sound more and more logical, right? It's almost mundane in its broadness of how the spirit world works. It's mundane and yet revolutionary. Is that we here on Earth, who most of us are just completely ignorant, we just go along our regular days. But there's this whole huge organization in management level upon management level directing us. And that statement I just said was made G. Vallon very curious as to which planets Arnell was referring to. He goes, okay, you said these other planets. Arnell wouldn't name them. He goes, tell me more about it. But he did provide the following information. This is what he said. Moreover, there are planets which are not visible to you. I'll bet they may be within the solar range, which must be considered in the matter. And also there are some few which are on the border of the system, but obey the pull of another star, and yet are the same or much like Earth. And two, there be which are not only considered within the solar range, but material in substance also, but of which your science at present takes no account, but will someday. So in 1919, one could well believe there may be planets just beyond our solar system, which we've been unable to detect. But in the 21st century, we've seen no evidence of these planets. And the reason lies in the complexity of the universe and the dimension when Arnell tells us about the existence of planets within our solar system, of which our devices don't see. The central fact to remember is that spirits have told us that we are currently unable to detect the spirit world around us, and we can only see about 1/8 of the sights and sounds which surround us every day. Hence, there are planets of existence in alternative dimensions which are invisible to us. And even in string theory, they'll say there's 11 dimensions. We see 4, right? We see very little. And in the Spirits book, I remember reading the Spirits book, and in the Spirits book, they talked about life like on Jupiter. I don't know, maybe it wasn't on Spirits book. It was one of his other books. Maybe it was Genesis. People can correct me. I said, well, life on Jupiter, that's stupid. And I don't know if I believe this. And then I kept reading. And then what I finally understood is that, yes, there could be life on Jupiter, Saturn, wherever, but it's in a different little, it could even still be physical, but it's a different dimension. There's the spirit universe, and then there's different areas in that. And then our physical universe, there's different dimensions in the physical universe. Our God has created something so complex, and I don't want to use too many, kind of computer science terms, but the data is packed so much. Think where we are here. What they're saying that there's spirit. We're on the umbrella, right? There's spirits all around us, and yet we see nothing. We see just a little bit of it. This Spiritism is given this just immense window in the fact that this is very complex, and we are almost like a data-driven universe where there are if you take a slice of what you're trying to look at, you'll see the Earth, or you take another slice, you'll see the umbra. You take another slice of the solar system, you'll see planets you haven't seen that we can't see. And spirits have told us over and over again that life is everywhere in the universe. There are no blank deserted areas. String theory tells us the same too. This only makes sense in that we live in a logical universe, a constructed universe, a universe of dense data structures and rules and processes which govern each segment. Now, let me try to help this more. Imagine a video game. The scenery could be varied. and fantastic, but all of it is a result of the collective wills of a team of software engineers. To the characters within it, the sights, distances, the passages of time is real. But to us outside, it is a logical construct which could fit on one small memory stick, a memory stick that could contain other games as well. Hence, we actually live in a compacted universe with structures and environments that are side by side, but which are invisible to each other, since it was determined by the creators to not allow one plane to normally peer into another. Although Arnell hints at a future where human science will acknowledge the existence of planets near to us, but in a different dimension. And Jesus Christ, is in charge of all this. Does the statement, "My kingdom is not of this world," begin to make much more sense now? So all of this must seem surreal and infused with pure fantasy. But when one ponders carefully the existence of a spirit world and accepts that we are immortal souls who live multiple lives in our pursuit to become pure spirits, it all begins to make sense. To be immortal, to live most of our time in another realm, means a complex configuration with an advanced organizational structure beyond our earthly comprehension. Spiritists understand that we are on earth here to learn. If this is true, then a greater force than us is in charge. Therefore, we must ascend to something. That higher state means that there must be superior beings, superior intellect, and superior technology in play. Our current earthly religions provide hints and fuzzy interpretations of what heaven could be. Spiritism begins to open up the other world with precise descriptions and illustrates a logical progression of what immortality means and where do we live within eternity. Now, let's imagine the alternatives. We die and disappear forever, or live in a place of heavenly bliss, doing nothing but contemplating for eternity. And as the Spirit says, and I paraphrase in the Spirit's book, now that would be the definition of hell, because, you'd be doing nothing, you wouldn't grow for eternity. So what heaven really is, heaven is this multi-layer. Oh, and then Sylvia says, it's magnificent. The universe, only a perfect God creates such a wonder. Exactly. And it goes on, and even the spirits who are talking to Reverend G. Bowen, they don't know how many levels. I mean, they think, to us, we think, well, they're very high spirits. But to them, they go, we don't know how many more levels. It can go on, and we could just be, nothing compared to that. I mean, Chico, who said he felt like, he was just a small, a cisco, instead of Chico, a cisco in Portuguese is like a little grain of sand. He said he felt like a little grain of sand. Why did he feel that way? I mean, he was a magnificent person, a wonderful person, much better than, almost, anyone I know or I could ever be. And yet he felt like nothing. So he had all this knowledge. So he must know what he's talking about. So it's very interesting. And so now let's talk about an actual example of given to the Reverend G. Bowen. Let me get a drink of water here. Of high spirits interacting with Christ. So the importance of learning more about your own spirituality and absorbing the lessons and reality of Jesus is argued by the high spirit Astriel in the book Life Beyond the Veil in the Lowlands of Heaven section. It is a communication of Reverend G. Bowen from Astriel in the spirit world that describes the significance of advancing your own knowledge about God, the spirit world, Jesus, and yourself. I want to give all this context. And remember, I'll speak more probably next week more on the sightings of Jesus, but I think this broadcast is important to give everybody a context of what we're talking about. This is what he told Reverend G. Bowen. And this we would say with solemnity. Let those who today amongst you are searching into the meaning of his divinity and in relation of that to his humanity, do so fearlessly and reverently. For such are guided more than they know from these realms. And it be always in the minds of those who are sincere that they can do no irreverence to him who himself is truth and inquiring what the truth is as he revealed it. The Spirit Asriel is telling us not to be afraid to search for spiritual wisdom in our own manner. As we seek, we shall be led by invisible forces of light in the pursuit of the good. Asriel then advises us to go beyond the restricted boundaries set by organized religion and to bravely seek out the truth. This is what he said. Nevertheless, friend, we tell you with this same fearlessness and with great reverence also, that what goes by the name of orthodoxy among Christians in the church on earth is not a fair and true representation in many ways of the truth as we come to know it here. And also we see among you too much unreadiness to go forward and lack of courage and faith in the providence of God, who will, if men will follow, lead them more and more into the light, the radiant glowing light, as it envelopes those who are brave, to show them the right and holy way towards his throne. Let such remember that the throne shall be shared only by the brave who are strong enough to overcome, and that these are who are valiant to do and dare, and pay the price at the hands of those fellows who are less courageous and less enlightened. What does that mean? Therefore, we need to discover for ourselves the true meaning of love, charity, and fraternity. We must live by the golden rule by how we see it. Asriel points the way to the path of knowledge. It is by exploring what spirits are telling us, by reading about Spiritism, the third revelation, which is the continuing message of love sent to us from Jesus via the Spirit of truth. We are told to step out of the box and not to be restrained by others' interpretation of the Bible, and to realize that messages from the spirit realm under the leadership of Jesus are constant and ever flowing. Jesus didn't cease teaching us the moment he died on the cross. He sent his messengers to reveal more about why we are here on earth and why we should strive to enter the celestial cities in heaven. The vital point to be taken is the amount of care parceled out to every one of us. The spirituality is listening and responding. We just lack the sensitivity to recognize the effect it has on our life. It can be done by evaluating your life, the signals and synchronicities that have shaped your present. You can begin to reveal the marvelous ways in which you have been guided. So, this hopefully gives you some kind of context of all the things. We are here. We are students. We are encouraged to learn. We are encouraged to go beyond what our current culture tells us, to go beyond what current organized religions to tell us, to understand this complex things. This is why Spiritism is so important. This is why studying is so important. And Zabdiel is starting to tell us on one of his communications, the Jiva one, is he's going to tell us the story of how Jesus appeared at a temple in the 10th level of heaven. Now, when I say 10th level of heaven, the spirits who came to Jiva one said they were going to use a numbering system. And they would use the numbering system in all the communications to the Reverend Jiva one. This is not a overall usage. I mean, these things can be described in other books by different ways. But it's just showing you the hierarchy. So what Zabdiel was trying to say is all spiritual power is based on love. And Zabdiel describes the power of love when he tells about Jesus coming to a temple in the 10th level of heaven. And the event was important and dramatic. It affected everyone who was present. Zabdiel describes a Jesus we don't see in the New Testament, a Jesus in charge, a powerful spirit, yet not in brute force, but grand in love. He introduces us to what love means in the 10th spirit heaven. This is what Zabdiel says what love is. He said, love strengthens and less love weakens in relation to its lack. Every stream of power which comes from the Supreme Father for our use in his service. They who have come so far as to this sphere are able, by what wisdom they have come at, to absorb into their personalities to see the trend of things. We see, as we get towards the unapproachable light, that all things are trending towards one central principle, and that is love. We see love at the source of all things. So, that was in January 1914. He spoke to Reverend Jiva one. And this was in the Highlands of Heaven section. And Zabdiel commented on this particular communication expounding on love. He wished the Jiva one to fully comprehend what he was going to tell him next. In fact, Zabdal notifies us that the universe is founded on the unity of forces under the command of love. A simple process, but complex in the adaptation of this force. He tells us that when these vibrations of spiritual activity reach the cosmos of matter, the perplexity of adaptation and coordination is very much increased. Again, this is what is told to us in Genesis of talking about the universal fluid, is that everything comes from one thing, but then vibrations and the density and the harmony of these things, they create all the other forms of matter. So let's talk about now the temple on the Holy Mount. I know we want to get to how people have actually seen Jesus. So introducing the spectacle of Christ at the temple with a discourse on the power of love should serve to condition us to interpret the events through a slightly different lens than merely reading the description of a ceremony. It is as if we look at a coronation and only notice what the king or queen is wearing, not detecting the political power of the throne itself or the process whereby royalty is anointed a position of great responsibility. So think of that. When I start reading what Zabdal is saying, just don't think of what Jesus looks like. Think of what he represents. Think of how everything works. So on a plain, this is what Zabdal says, on a large plain in the sphere 10, there is a high mountain which stands sheer up from the grassland and dominates its fellow mountains like a king on his throne among his courtiers. Here and there, about the steep ascent, as viewed from the plain, you see buildings. Some are shrines open to the view on every side. Some are sanctuaries in which worship is offered. And on the summit, the temple itself, which is over all and to which all ministers and lead. From this temple, from time to time, manifestations of the presence are given to assemblies gathered on the plain below. It is said here, not so much for worship within, but for the uplifting and strengthening and education of worshipers who assemble on the plain. Keepers and officers there are who worship within the temple. These are very high in degree. And if you go in with them until they have progressed some spheres onward and return on some duty to this 10th sphere. It is a colony of powers who are advanced beyond this 10th in their persons, but who visit this high place on missions of help and judgment from time to time. And there are always some of them there. The temple is never left without its complement, but I have not been within, and I shall not until I have attained to higher power and sublimity in the spheres beyond. So that's what Zabdal said. So again, just like any college, you have higher and higher students, higher and higher people. Then they'll come down and if a student is raised, a graduate student, then they'll teach undergraduates. So there's all these people always coming up and down and throughout eternity. So it's amazing. So the temple seemingly stood upon a high mountain in the middle of a vast plain, like a raised altar on a flat, desert ground. The temple itself, the temple itself is more than a symbol. It had a function which superior spirits undertook to the benefit of the citizens of the 10th sphere. So even when we go to heaven, so this is important. When we go to heaven, our education doesn't end. It never ends. You keep going level by level. Here on earth, we're learning. When you're in heaven, you're just going to keep learning. So Zabdal next describes the multitude of people assembled. On this plain were gathered a very vast number of people, called thither from all parts of this wide sphere. From some half a mile, as you would say, from the mountain's base, they stretch out far across the country, group after group, until they look like a sea of flowers in gentle movement. Their jewels of order flash as they move, and their garments of many hues ever shimmering from one combination of colors into another. High up on the sacred mount stood the temple, and from time to time they looked that way in expectations. So it was kind of like an elaborate Olympic ceremony, opening the games with the uniforms of each country represented and formed in precise order. The populace gathered in expectation. They didn't have to wait for long. A group of high spirits came out on the porch of the temple, and after the crowd was blessed, they were told of the purpose of this event. Each individual in the vast plain below could perfectly hear the message. They were gathered to witness the spirits who would be initiated into the 11th sphere. Zabdiel tells us that no one in the crowd knew who would be chosen, so the entire vast sea of spirits waited in silence. So, this is when Jesus was. Zabdiel now starts describing what happened during this ceremony of graduation. Then from the gate of the temple came forth a man, clad in simple white, but radiant and very lovely. On his head was a fillet of gold, and gold sandals upon his feet. About his middle was a belt of red, which shone and set forth rays of crimson here and there as he moved forward. In his right hand he carried a golden cup. In his left hand, upon his girdle and near his heart, we knew him at once, the Son of Man, Jesus Christ. For no one else is like to him, who in whatever form of manifestation seen ever blends two forces perfectly in himself, love and royalty. So again, this is how he describes it, love and royalty. He says, there is always a simplicity in his grandeur and a majesty in his simplicity. Both these you feel come into you and blend with your own life whenever he manifests himself as now. And when that manifestation is over, the blessing so received does not pass from you, but remains a part of you always. So think of this. This is not Jesus here on earth. This is him in the position of power and coming and talking to people, directing work. The Bible records the effect of Jesus' sermon, how crowds remain mesmerized for hours, waiting, listening to his words. So even while encased in the fell physical envelope, the spiritual influence of Jesus shone like the bright rays of the sun to those able to receive it. And while in spirit form, his grandeur was magnified. Zabdiel describes Jesus in his rightful place in the spirit world. This is what Zabdiel says. He says, he stood there, beautiful altogether, and sweet beyond my telling, sweet and loving, with just a tincture of sacrificing pity, which did but add to the joyful solemnity of his face, that face with the smile itself, but yet he did not smile in act. And in the smile were tears, not of sorrow, but of joy to give of his own to others in love. His whole aspect and what his form expressed was so manifold of powers and graces and combinations as to make him one alone among those others who attended him there, and to set him above all as king. So Zabdiel saw Jesus, appeared not only to see the crowd, but levels of heaven beyond the multitude. Jesus wasn't alone like any grand personage. He had his attendants, who in themselves were figures of distinction. This is what Zabdiel says. One thing I noted, and will tell you as well as I may, each of those blessed spirits had a well-defined and powerful character written upon the countenance and in the gait and actions of each. No two had the same virtues in equal parts and combination. Each was very high angel in degree and authority, but each a personality in himself or herself, and no two alike. And as he stood there, they on either side and somewhat on the lower edge before him, and in him both face and form were united in sweet blend and communion. The beauties and qualities and powers of them all. In him you could see each quality of theirs distinct, yet blended together. Yes, he was alone, and his aloneness lent added majesty to his appearing. So this is extremely important for us to understand. The supreme spirituality, God, and Jesus doesn't desire us to be shaped by the same mold. They want to give us our free will, so we may all be a well-defined and powerful character in our own right. This is the gift that we are given. Free will explains everything great about the world and everything wrong about the world, right? We aren't workers in some ant colony born and destined for a single function. We are all cherished individuals, free to rise and grow in our own manner. And with such wonderful opportunity comes great responsibility and hard work. Free will is the fount of all our victories and defeats, our times of ecstasy and deepest depression, poverty and riches, every decision and act that later we must pay. When you are in the cavern of great trouble, think of that as one small step toward becoming a powerful angel. So now, the ceremony begins. So this is what Zabdiel says. A while he stood alone in rapturous silence, still and beautiful, altogether to look upon. Meanwhile, in the throng of bright ones about him, a movement began. Slowly and with no haste, the multitude rose into the air and took shape until there was an oval of light around him and on both sides of him. Those who were in the rear were higher than his head, and those in the front were lower than his feet. So a frame was made, and as it took shape, their brightness increased until we scarce discerned the forms of them by reason of the brightness of their glory. They shone golden all about him, but he was more radiant still than all others beside, as they stood now and shining. Only before his feet was there no arc of light, but a breach was made so that the oval was not complete, but gapped at its lowest part. Then he moved, his left hand extended, and he stretched forth toward us in benediction. With his right hand he tilted the chalice toward us, and from its bowl poured forth a thin stream on a many-colored light, which fell upon the rock before him, and flowed down the face of the mountain toward the plain. And as it flowed, it increased in volume until it began to lap over the plain toward us, still expanding. It reached us in a broad river of light, and in it were seen colors in all their hues, from deep purple to pale lilac, from deep red to faint pink, from orange brown to gold, and all these mingled here and there in streams of green and other composite hue. So this was a great grand production. This is not merely to entertain, but to demonstrate the unity of his ministers and functionary, and to illustrate the creative power awaiting each and every person in the plain below. It also piqued the interest of every spectator. As Zabdiel tells us, as the rivers of light made its way into the vast crowd, this is what he says. So it came to us, among us. And as we stood there wondering both the thing done and the beauty of it, now it swept onward till it had covered all ground on which stood that vast multitude of people. But they did not stand in the liquid lake, for it did not rise above their feet, but formed a sea beneath them as they stood upon it. Nor could the eye penetrate to see the grassland upon which it had rested, as upon a seabed. It seemed to lie there beneath us, very deep, a sea of liquid glass, rainbow tinted, and upon that sea we stood as if on firm ground. Yet it was all in motion, here and there in little waves, and here and there in rivulets of red or blue or other colors, flowing among the southern foot. Very strange and very pretty to see. But in a while there was noticed that it did not serve everyone equally. There was one here, another at some little distance, and this repeated throughout the throng, who became conscious of a change in them, and this made them to be silent in very deep meditation. This change also became apparent to their near neighbors, for this is what they saw. So what he's saying is, on this great plain of people, some people, and it's this like ocean of multicolored light came out, and then some individuals, different things started happening to them, different than what the other people. Other people were just standing on the sea, right? But some people, this is what happens. This is what Zabdiel describes. The flood of light about him who was thus changed ran yellow gold and lapped first his ankles, and then rising like a pillar of liquid glass, all radiant, bathed his knees, and then still rose until about him was a pillar of light, and he in the midst of a golden radiance. Then upon his head, in place of a jewel or chaplet or whatever he wore, there appeared 11 stars. These were also of gold, but of a brilliance greater than the stream, as if it had become concentrated into 11 jeweled stars to crown the chosen one. On each of those so dealt with, that fillet of stars rested upon his head near his forehead, and clasped his head on each side behind the ears. Thus it rested and shone, make the wearer more beautiful, for the light seemed to invade his countenance and all his body, and uplift him above his fellows. So, the display had the intelligence to seek out a selected number of the audience. Jesus and his attendants of high spirits designed a spectacle that demonstrated that they knew each and every soul among the multitude on the plain below. Next came the reason for this gathering. This is what Zabdiel says. Then the Son of Man tilted back the cup, and the stream ceased to flow, and the rock became visible once again, where before it had been hidden by the river of the light falling. Presently the grassland about the multitude began also to be seen, and at last all the sea colors had melted away, and as we stood on the plain afore we had done, only those remained, those who become enveloped, right, with the light and the stars. They were enveloped now no more, but they were changed for aye, and would never be as they'd ever been before. Their countenance had become a more ethereal appearance. Their bodies also and their robes were of brighter hue than those of their fellows, and of another color. Also the 11 stars remained to crown them with their light. Only the pillar of radiance was no more about them to be seen. Now another man came forth on the temple, and cried with a very strong voice of great sweetness, that those who had the stars should come forth of the crowd and stand before the Mount Blessing. So they came forth, and Zabdiel says he was among them. And while he stood there, he spoke, "You have well done, my children, very much beloved, in what duty has been given into your hands. Not perfectly have you served the Father and me, but as you were able, so did your work. I ask no more than you do after this manner in the wider sphere of service in which I call you now. Come up to me, therefore, my beloved, and I will show you the path into that higher place where your houses await. You shall be ready, and many friends to welcome you, who you will find there. Come up to me." So Zabdiel says a stairway was then created so that all those people who were chosen could then walk up the stairwell to where Jesus was into the temple. So imagine that graduation ceremony, and also imagine this. On earth, when you graduate, you wear a gown and you get this piece of paper. In the spirit world, when you graduate, you are actually physically altered. You be as you go higher and higher in the spirit world, you become less matter and more energy. These people graduated from the 10th to 11th sphere, as he said, became more ethereal, right? More energy, less matter. Imagine if we did this on earth. Imagine you're a spectator in a stadium watching a graduation ceremony. When the students dispersed among the crowd, not dressed in gowns, but in street clothes, sitting with friends and family, indistinguishable from anyone else. The honored few who are chosen aren't announced by the loudspeakers, but by rays of light which bends and winds its way to the intended. Once it reaches its destination, the light doesn't merely shine upon the chosen one, but transform them. As a computer software managers in the movie To Create Hulk from Dr. Bruce Banner, the graduate is similarly altered. Jesus and his high angels have the capability to mold reality to their will. Again, this is the important thing of the spirit world. On our physical plane, there's physical laws. It's more subjective. We can't change things. In the spirit world, you're getting more and more to the objective, where thought is action. The environment conforms to their thought, to their direction, not the other way around. Not only may the appearance of the scenery, but the spirits who inhabit their domains may be enhanced upon command. Abilities beyond anything in our world, except our imaginations. This is the majesty and power of Jesus. This is the majesty and power of a perfect spirit. Think of Jesus on the cross, his powerlessness, and his image of dying for man's sins. Jesus knew his mission on earth was to die. He always knew that. Even before he took physical form, he knew that anyone superior descending to earth to attempt to teach the ignorant masses that love should be placed over position and raw power was destined to face an unnatural death. Jesus didn't have to come to earth in a physical form. He could have sent his messengers, Socrates, Buddha, and other high spirits who volunteered to teach us to the correct path. But he came himself in an act of love, of self-sacrifice, and of concern for the advancement of humanity's spirituality. He played the part he had to in order to illustrate with love and humility the correct path for spiritual growth. The spirits who are on the plane, the chosen ones to ascend, and the ones remaining behind, are all on the track to learn to love like Jesus. This is why they reside on the 10th level of heaven, for they have learned to not allow bad or evil intentions to cloud their judgment. They have exercised their free will to follow the example of Jesus and other high spirits, to remove the impurities within and to prepare themselves for great power and great responsibilities. The few that ascended to the 11th sphere are the future leaders, the movers and shakers, the managers and executives of the spirit world, who command veritable armies of souls to watch over us, to guide us, to comfort us, and to support us in our daily trials and tribulations, in our short physical life on this campus of learning. Now, I hope this gives people one, small little view into, the spirit world. It's just so much more complex, and but it also simplifies. It also simplifies our own. It should simplify our own attitude and our own perceptions of who we are. If we just think ourselves as students, and we should be. You're welcome. Sylvie says, thank you. You're very welcome. We should think ourselves as humbly that, we're here to learn. We're not here on earth to have great intellect, right? In the spirit world, we're much smarter. We're here on earth to get rid of our kind of our lacking personality traits and remove those things, jealousy, envy, and remove those and put love, honesty, charity, fraternity in its place. And that is really the message that we should, that we should take from this. And the rest of it is just fascinating. And it helps cement and understand what is around us. And that's what I'm hoping that I have given to this group today, is this kind of a little bit of a peek. The peek that was given by the wonderful Reverend G. Val Owen. And, I have 3 books. Book 1 is Heaven and Below. Book 2 is this, Spirits and Spirit Universe. And book 3 is How We Are Guided by Spirits. And there's so much information. And of course, there's really great spiritualist literature out there. Anything by Leon Denis, Chico Xavier, Yvonne Pereira, Devaldo Franco. I'm sure I'm missing many people. They're all great. But the Reverend G. Val Owen was given, it's a little bit different. There's a lot more about heaven itself. There was a lot more about the organization. It's just very interesting. So anyway, I want to leave that to you, and I want to thank everyone. I want to invite everyone to learn more about Spiritism. If you'd like to go to nwspiritism.com, nwspiritism.com. I have articles every day. Please also join Kardec Radio. I'll post this also on my YouTube channel, and I'm trying to, get more and more information on Spiritism on my YouTube channel. There's also on the Facebook site, Spiritism in the Spirit World Around Us. There are other people, and I just forgot his name. He has his own channel. He's from, I think, the Broward County Spiritist Society. He's creating Spiritist YouTube channels, small, 5 to 8 minutes, 10 minutes talks, which are, wonderful. So check him out on my on our Facebook page, Spiritism and the Spirit World Around Us also. So I'm hoping that we give people a lot of information. Every one of us learns differently, right? That's why I write books, I write articles, I do YouTube. Other spiritists here in the United States and around the world are doing the same, all kind of giving us different points of view. And then don't hesitate, write me messages, write other spiritist messages on our Facebook site, Spiritism, the Spirit World Around Us, and on the Kardec Radio Facebook site. People are always writing comments and, ask questions, and other people jump in, just like they did today on comments. They jump in and they will help answer things. And then everyone has different points of view. So remember, Spiritism is not a religion, it's a doctrine. And Spiritism, as we started in the 1850s, right from here, the Spirits book, is always, the spirit world's always giving us more and more information. So not one of us can say, hey, I have the truth. No. It's always, we're getting more and more, we're learning, right? We should all be humble with that. So I want to thank everyone for being part of our Facebook site, our streaming today on Kardec Radio Facebook. And please, if you like this, share it to other Facebook sites, share it to other sites, because the more we get this out, the better the message is. And I want to bless everyone. Thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you later.